Prior to that, he was in America for some months as a policy advisor also for the Trump campaign before returning to Australia. When you hear him speak, he's originally from Milwaukee, but he calls Australia home now. Ladies, please welcome Darren Nelson.
Thank you. Today I'm going to talk about the cost of living. I understand these presentations will be available at a later stage, so there's a lot of extra information there, so I'll try to skim over a lot of this so we can stick to the time. Was it 12 minutes or 15, something? So as per the quote up there, that pretty much sums up, I guess, the view of me and in this presentation. Just to sort of paraphrase, the drivers of the high and rising cost of living in Australia, or actually anywhere to be honest, is really the plethora of government interventions that not only increasingly skew the balance of freedom versus control away from freedom, but also necessarily raise costs and prices and thus reduce growth and jobs. Key amongst these drivers are tax, regulation, and money. And some of these other speakers will touch on some of these topics over the course of this hour. And key amongst the negative impacts are, particularly on energy, housing, and labor, sort of wages, that sort of thing. So this is an outline of my discussion. I'm kind of going to just step back, for those who kind of wonder at times, like, well, why do we care so much about reducing taxes or regulation, et cetera? So a lot of my discussion would be kind of setting the stage for why we should care about that in the first place. Here's a blurb, a party blurb. I'll let you read that. But just to summarize, we are actually talking about other issues, particularly my senator, Malcom Roberts. He's kind of the de facto economic policy guy, and I'm his economic policy advisor. So we're certainly looking at a range of issues, and particularly the cost of living is a big issue. By that, I'm sort of loosely tying together concepts like the standard of living, which you think of in terms of households, the cost of doing business, obviously for businesses, and this other concept, inflation, which is really to do with the money supply, which affects everybody essentially. The evidence, there's been, I think a lot of you have seen media headlines like this one, cost of living Australia tops the global list of expensive countries. I've personally felt that, and I imagine a lot of you have personally felt that as well. And I think, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't have much faith in the statistic of the CPI, but it's still, even that government statistic, which they, methodically push downwards, still paints a pretty ugly picture in my view. I'll quickly run through this. My approach, as he mentioned, I'm an Austrian economist, but I'm also trained in neoclassical economics, and I'm also interested in other schools of thought like public choice, transaction costs. Just not that this is all that important, but my sort of ethical viewpoints are Christian viewpoints. So starting out, just to start to set the stage and run through a little bit of a narrative, if you like. Economics is about human action. Or in other words, people acting through time and space in pursuit of ends using means, none of which are infinite or free, and thus are of subjective value. All people are also interact with others, clearly, too. So, sometimes libertarians get a bit obsessed with individualism. I mean, that's a slightly different concept, actually. That's fine if you want to do that, but that's certainly not what economics is about, nor free market economics. Human ends and means and can only be really formulated and attained through two means, and that's essentially through voluntary cooperation or political force. That's really it. That's the two options. Pen's falling over. Let's move on to profits. Everybody's heard that leftist cliche of, we need to put people before profits. Well, what this is really saying is they want their profits before others. That's essentially what they're saying. Why is that? Because the outcome sought by all humans in their action is profit. Now, not necessarily monetary profit, but some sort of profit. You do stuff because you think it's worthwhile to do. I mean, you sometimes get it wrong, fair enough. And profit can be monetary, it can be material, or a term that's often used as psychic profit. So, even the people on the left are searching for at least psychic profits. Well, actually, a lot of them are actually seeking monetary profits too. They just pretend as though they're not. So for example, if I buy a cup of coffee from a cafe, then by definition, I actually valued it above the price. And by definition, they valued it less than the price. At least ex ante before the transaction. So, So that's essentially inherently a win-win situation. And I'll leave people if they want to look at that lovely economics graph at some later stage. Property. Most people know this in the room, but just for those who don't, property is a lot more than just, say, a legal right to what they call real property or land. Obviously, I would describe it as a natural right to yourself, of course, to your stuff, whatever that happens to be, and your life more broadly. And that kind of brings back the concepts of ends and means and profits, as you can see in the presentation. To quote an Austrian philosopher, as opposed to an Austrian economist, the private property, and I won't quote the whole thing, just a bit of it, the private property ethic produces a higher general standard of living than any other one. And that's kind of generally accepted amongst any type of economist or libertarian for the most part. But ultimately, such considerations can only convince somebody who already accepts the utilitarian goal of general wealth maximization, which not everybody does. But he goes on, says, well, a property right to one's own body must be said to be justified a priori. For anyone who tried to justify any norm whatsoever would already have to presuppose the exclusive right of control over one's own body to even say that in the first place. And then going further, and to sustain such arguments, one must be allowed to essentially live. So therefore, you need resources to live, and you can read the quote for yourself. But this is, whether you agree with it or not, I think it's a very strong way of at least looking at the ethics of private property, and not just the economics. Prices, of course, they're a key contractual term to bring in a bit of legalese in the exchange of property, and that's what, when you go on an exchange, that's what you're doing. It's property of some description. It can be money or another good for a good, or your labor for a good, etc. Prices at the same time are, an objective benchmark, if you like, for comparing what is otherwise subjective values. So thus, prices are incentives and information intertwined. And as Hayek has stated, basically, well, I'll read a little bit of it anyway. Into the determination of prices, there will enter the effects of particular information possessed by every one of the participants in the market process. Essentially something that just not any single person or bureaucrat or a small group of people can possibly understand. A little bit more on prices, just to bring it back again to subjective value, just to remind people that value at the end of the day, not prices, slightly different thing, is a subjective thing. It's in the eye of the beholder. But that's a good thing, because that makes exchange something that can be win-win. So it's not like, a lot of people on the left always think these things are win-lose. That's not the case at all. They're win-win. And just quickly now to get back into more cost of living concepts. This is where this is all heading. To sort of quote another sort of Austrian economist, Murray Rothbard, the price and the purchasing power of the unit of a product are one and the same. And then he went on to discuss the relationship between that and purchasing power. So you can see in this chart up here that purchasing power of money is the inverse of whatever we construct as the price level. Is that it? Oh my gosh. So basically, just a quick one here. I'll really summarize this. Cost-benefit analysis has lots of problems, both theoretical and practical, to be honest. But I think it's quite a useful discipline that needs to be brought in more in keeping governments honest, or at least trying to do so. I probably won't go through this one. You can read it at some other stage. I'll get into sort of tax. Just a quick one. You read a lot in the press that a tax is something that just is passed on by businesses. That's rubbish. Every economist will agree on that, regardless of their school of thought. This hurts the economy, so it's basically hurting businesses and consumers when you have a tax. So obviously, if you reduce them, you're helping them all out as well. And another important point by Rothbard is there are classes really, not in the Marxian sense, but there are really the classes of net taxpayers and net tax consumers. And this process creates a lot of these net tax consumers. And I'd also just like to quickly mention, for a lot of people go, if you reduce taxes, you'll hurt the debt. Everybody's at least heard of the Laffer curve. So, he's not the first one to come up with this concept that no, you can actually, at least maybe not right away, but certainly shortly thereafter, you can actually get more of the tax revenue. That's not the most important bit, but you can actually get in more tax revenue with lower taxes. Regulation, it's a very hard topic. Usually people focus on the really easy to measure tangible burdens, but I mean, there's no exact number, but it's roughly kind of, you're really talking 10%. It's the tip of the iceberg. The real stuff is the stuff you don't see easily, all the intangible stuff that really just lowers innovation and growth in the economy, and particularly all those unintended consequences. And a typical response by government to unintended consequences is price control. And they've been doing that for 4,000 years and failing for 4,000 years. I'll go on to money, just a quick one. Even sort of Milton Friedman, Chicago economist, always recognized that inflation is a money phenomenon. It's not all these other things that you hear in the news. And even the leftist Keynes warned about its process, which essentially is it's income transfer, it's redistribution. And I just want to highlight that. We all know how the Fed's announced that they've been doing quantitative easing for a while. I'm not sure if they stopped, but anyway, the point is the Reserve Bank has been doing something very similar for much longer and has never said a word about it. So the Senator and I are going to have started the process of holding the Reserve Bank to account, because this is absolute garbage. They basically act as though they're above the law. And just a quick one, you can read at a later stage. Rothbard sets out quite nicely how, the money supply basically leads to higher prices, i.e. a higher cost of living. So the solution, all policies, for the most part, they either reduce or remove market interventions, or they do the opposite. And this has pretty much been a race throughout humanity, to be honest. And I think to do that, and this is sort of getting back to what people have said throughout this conference, obviously we've always focused on trying to win minds, which is good. We also need to win the hearts, of course, I think through things like ethics, not just economic arguments. Sadly, and I'm just throwing these on the table, we might have to win their wallets, because we haven't been winning the fight very much. So maybe like with taxi, you really have to just buy them out, sort of thing, just to get them out of the way. Threaten things maybe more dramatic, like secession, or obviously the digital age allows for a lot of bypassing. And just a quick one before I finish up. The Senator and I are hoping to hold a policy summit on the cost of living on 23 June in Parliament House, and just be on the lookout for that. We'd love to see people attend.